If you're listening to this, chances are you know that feeling,
Mm.
that financial stress.
Mm.
It's not like a sudden shock. It's more like a constant draining background hum.
And it's so easy to internalize that, especially if you're managing debt on a smaller income.
Exactly. The world kind of tells us that, real financial freedom is for the high earners, the six-figure salaries.
And that narrative is just so limiting, it makes the problem feel permanent,
Hmm.
impossible even.
Yeah, totally impossible.
It creates this learned helplessness.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at, they make a really simple point. Financial success isn't about how much money is coming in.
It's about how you manage it.
It's all about how you manage and direct what you already have.
Yeah.
So for you, the listener, it's not about waiting for some huge raise. It's about starting a process of consistent, intentional steps right now.
And that's exactly what we're going to build today. This deep dive is a roadmap. We've structured it as a 5-phase approach to not just eliminate debt, but to build real stability. We're starting with the internal stuff, the way you think about money, then moving to the nuts and bolts and ending up with long-term security. We want to give you that shortcut to turning scarcity into structure.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Phase 1, the debt mindset.
The mindset.
Before we even think about a spreadsheet, we have to admit something. Debt is a mental and an emotional challenge first. The sources are so clear on this. It shows up as stress, shame, and critically, avoidance.
Avoidance is huge. People just don't want to open the envelopes.
Or check the bank balance, because confronting it, the mental pain of it feels worse than the actual debt itself.
And that avoidance, it just feeds right into those.
The limiting beliefs.
Exactly, the limiting beliefs, the things we tell ourselves, like, I'll never make enough money, or I'm just bad with money.
And they become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
You put off taking action right when you need to take action the most.
It's a shame spiral. The embarrassment literally stops you from getting the clarity you need to fix it.
Precisely. Which is why the very first shift has to be emotional, has to be intellectual. You have to consciously reframe what debt is.
Okay, so how do you do that?
You stop seeing it as a personal failure. That just creates guilt and paralysis. Instead, you have to start seeing it as an infrastructure problem.
An infrastructure problem. I like that.
It needs a technical solution. You replace that feeling of helplessness with empowerment by focusing only on what you can control. Your next choice, your spending, your action steps.
And visualizing success, does that really help?
It's not just some airy-fairy idea. It is a necessary part of sticking to a tough plan for the long haul.
Okay, a 5-phase approach sounds great, but for someone who's just completely paralyzed by debt, where do they even begin? Phase 2 is taking that cold, hard look at reality, and that sounds terrifying.
It is daunting, I won't lie. But confronting that reality is the antidote to the vagueness that paralyzes you.
How so?
When debt is just this big, vague stressor, it feels infinite. But when it's concrete numbers on a page, it becomes manageable.
So that's phase 2, assessing your situation.
Knowledge is power. It really is.
So practically speaking, what's step 1 of the assessment? Getting it all out in the open.
You basically have to conduct a financial audit on yourself. That means grabbing every single financial document you can find. Pay stubs, bank statements, credit card statements, loan agreements.
Every single bill.
Every recurring bill, every subscription renewal. You need a complete picture of your financial landscape. Leave no stone unturned.
And from there, we build the debt inventory. And for people on smaller incomes, this part has to be super meticulous, right? Because not all debt is the same.
Not at all. With limited resources, you often run into the most punishing kinds of credit. So your inventory needs everything. Credit cards, sure, personal loans, but also those really aggressive debts.
Like payday loans.
Payday loans, title loans, even those rent-to-own deals. These are the shapeless monsters that you need to name and tame.
And for each one of those, you need more than just the name. You need, 3 critical numbers? These are the ones that guide your strategy later on.
That's right. For every single debt, you need the total balance, the minimum monthly payment, and this is the most critical part, the annual interest rate, the APR.
This is where the shift happens.
Exactly. This is where you turn overwhelming stress into a clear, prioritized list of targets. You can suddenly see which debt is costing you the most money in interest every single month.
But the assessment isn't just about what you owe, is it? It's also about where your money is leaking out.
Right. You have to track all your expenses, everything, for at least one full month.
To find opportunities.
Exactly. You categorize it all. Essentials, rent, food, utilities,
Yeah.
and non-essentials. Dining out, entertainment, subscriptions. We're not doing this to judge ourselves. We're tracking to find hidden cash flow.
And the sources mentioned something really specific for lower income earners here. It's not just about cutting things, right?
This is such a critical point.
Yes.
Beyond cutting back, you should also be tracking your eligibility for assistance programs.
Things like
Utility assistance, local food banks, specific tax credits that people often overlook. An unexpected refund or a new benefit can give you a much bigger chunk to throw at debt than just cutting discretionary spending alone. It turns awareness into maximum opportunity.
that leads us right into phase 3, budgeting for control. For a lot of people, the word budget just sounds so restrictive. It sounds like a financial straitjacket.
I get that, but it's not. It's your financial roadmap. It's the tool that gives you awareness of your limits and, more importantly, control over your choices.
Because you decide where every pound goes.
You decide. It puts you in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Without a budget, your money is managing you.
Okay, so let's talk methods. Incomes vary, so people need options. Let's start with zero-based budgeting. That one's for maximum accountability.
ZBB is perfect if you get to the end of the month and wonder where all your money went. The idea is simple. Income minus expenses has to equal zero. Every single pound gets a job.
Bills, groceries, debt.
Every last one. If you make 3,000 pounds, you have to account for where all 3,000 pounds of it is going. It forces you to be incredibly intentional.
But that sounds a bit rigid. What if your income is unpredictable, like from gig work?
That's where the 50-30-20 rule is great. It's much more of a flexible guideline. 50% of your income goes to essentials, housing, food, minimum payments.
30% to wants.
30% for discretionary spending, your wants.
Yeah.
And then that final 20% goes straight to accelerating debt repayment or building savings. If your income fluctuates, the amounts change, but the percentages give you a stable framework.
And what about for people who the whole digital spending thing is a problem. You swipe a card and you don't feel the pain.
For them, the envelope system is fantastic. It's tactile. For your variable spending categories like groceries or entertainment, you take out cash and put it in physical envelopes.
And when the cash is gone.
The spending stops.
Yeah.
It makes the transaction real again. It stops that unconscious digital overspending.
Let's just highlight the power of small changes again, because this is where people really start to build momentum. The sources had some really good examples.
They're not huge sacrifices, but they make a huge difference. Think about a daily 5-pound coffee.
That adds up fast.
It's 150 pounds a month. That could be enough to double the minimum payment on a small credit card. Or cooking at home just 3 more nights a week instead of getting takeout. That can free up anywhere from 60 pounds to 100 pounds a month.
And the key thing, like you said, is that money has to be immediately redirected. It needs a job in your budget.
It has to. Otherwise, it just gets absorbed somewhere else. Look, the tool you use, an app like YNAB, a spreadsheet, a stack of envelopes, it matters so much less than the consistency. You have to review your budget every single week.
Okay, so we know where the money is going. We have the roadmap. Now, phase 4, this is about accelerating repayment. We have to boost cash flow.
Right. And that means 2 things. Aggressively increasing what comes in and radically reducing what goes out.
Let's start with inflow. For listeners on modest incomes, every extra pound counts. We're looking for creative ways to bring in some extra cash.
For sure. If you have a marketable skill writing, tutoring, even just good administrative support platforms like Fiverr or Upwork can be a great place to start.
We think of side hustles as these huge time commitments, but even just a couple of hours a week can completely change the debt repayment math.
Another really quick win is to just declutter for cash.
Selling stuff on eBay or Facebook Marketplace?
Exactly. It does 2 things. It generates immediate cash, which has to go straight to debt. And it simplifies your life. Less stuff, less consumer clutter. And if you have a hobby you can monetize, even better.
Now, on the outflow side, maximizing the income you already have, this starts with negotiating bills, which feels non-optional.
It should be. You need to call your providers, your insurance, your phone company, your internet provider. The data shows that just by calling and asking for a better rate, people often get one.
A 10 or 20% reduction right there.
It happens all the time. And you have to be ruthless about auditing your hidden expenses, those little banking fees, the subscriptions you forgot about, the auto renewals. Cut them.
So once we've found that extra cash flow, we need a strategy to attack the debt. The sources really boil it down to 2 main approaches, and the choice is all about your personality.
It really is. We're talking about the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. They both work, but they prioritize very different things.
Let's start with the debt snowball. How does that work?
The snowball is all about momentum, psychology. You list your debts from the smallest balance to the largest, and you completely ignore the interest rates.
Ignore the interest rate.
With
Really?
this method, yes. You throw all your extra cash at the smallest debt while paying the minimums on everything else. Once that first debt is gone and you celebrate that win, you take all the money you were paying on it and you roll it into the payment for the next smallest one.
Creating a snowball of payment.
Exactly. The psychological boost from knocking out that first debt is huge. It keeps you motivated.
But what's the downside? It sounds almost too good to be true.
The con is math. It's efficiency. Because you're ignoring interest rates, you will almost certainly pay more in total interest over time. If your smallest debt is at 5% and your biggest is at 25%, you're delaying the attack on your most expensive problem.
Which brings us to the debt avalanche, the math strategy.
Precisely. With the Avalanche, you list your debts by the highest interest rate first, and you attack that one no matter how big the balance is.
So you're saving money in the long run.
A lot of money, potentially. By targeting the debt that's costing you the most in interest each day, you minimize the total interest paid. Tackling a 25% APR credit card before a 10% loan could save you thousands.
I can see how that could be demoralizing. If that highest rate debt is also a huge balance, it could take a long time to see progress.
And that's the trade-off. Progress feels slower at the start. So the most important thing here is that the best strategy is not the one that's better on paper. It's the one you'll actually stick with.
That makes sense.
And one quick tactical point, if you're really struggling and can't even make all the minimum payments, you have to prioritize secured debt, like a car loan, or debts tied to necessities, like utilities, come before unsecured debt, like credit cards. Protect your core assets first.
Okay, that brings us to our final and maybe the most critical phase, sustaining freedom. Paying off debt is a marathon. How do you keep going when you're in that long, slow middle part?
Motivation isn't a one-time thing. You have to actively maintain it.
How?
You have to build in celebrations, acknowledge the small wins, paying off that first tiny card, hitting your first emergency savings goal, sticking to the budget for a full month.
Using visual trackers can help there too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Printable debt charts, apps that show the numbers going down, seeing that progress reinforces the positive behavior.
And the goal setting needs to be realistic. Looking at the huge total can just crush you.
You have to break it down. Short-term goals. Conquer one small debt. Midterm goals. Pay off that big high-interest card, or maybe save up a 1,000-pound buffer. The long-term goal is total freedom.
And don't go it alone.
Please don't. A support system, family, friends, even an online community provides accountability and encouragement when you really need it.
So what happens when the debt is finally gone? It's not just about getting to zero. It's about building lasting security.
That cash flow you freed up has to get a new job immediately, and that job is savings.
The emergency fund.
Priority number one is the emergency fund. It has to be consistent, even if you start with just 10 pounds a week. The goal is to build a cushion that covers 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses. That fund is the shield that stops you from ever going back into debt.
And then we have to protect that progress. There's this danger that comes after debt freedom, lifestyle inflation.
It is the quiet killer of building wealth. Lifestyle inflation is when you increase your spending to match your new financial reality. You were paying 500 pounds a month on debt. Now that it's gone, you just get a car payment for 500 pounds.
And you're right back where you started financially.
Exactly. You have to commit to continued budgeting and tracking. Don't increase your spending just because the money is there.
Instead, that freed up cash, the money that used to go to some bank's interest payments, needs to be redirected toward your future.
Yes. Once the emergency fund is solid, that money gets channeled into investing, even low-cost index funds to start, or into education to increase your future earnings, into saving for your actual life goals, like a down payment or travel. You're shifting money from a source of fear into a tool for opportunity.
So to just quickly summarize this whole journey for everyone listening, it starts with your mindset. Then you move to an honest assessment of your situation. You build a budget for control, apply a powerful repayment strategy, Snowball or Avalanche, and finally you work on sustaining that freedom.
And the common thread through all of it is consistency, intentionality.
You don't need a six-figure salary to win this. You just need a smart, sustained plan.
And, financial freedom isn't really the end of the journey. It's the beginning. It's the start of a life where you get to choose your future instead of being dictated by past mistakes. By building these habits now, you make sure money works for you as a tool instead of against you as a source of fear.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with. What is the single, small, intentional action you will take today to start this transformation? Maybe it's just tracking one expense, or identifying one limiting belief you hold, or setting up one cash envelope. That first little bit of momentum is everything, and your future self will absolutely thank you for taking that first step.